Tyler's classmates and the neighborhood are very shocked that Tyler would be, first and foremost, involved in this at all. If like, they're not saying he couldn't have been involved, but rather that there's no way he could have acted alone, that this had to be a part of some wider plot, okay?
Has now raised a chilling warning. What if Tyler Robinson isn't guilty after all? Or worse, what if he wasn't acting alone? In a shocking twist inside the courtroom, Tyler finally broke his silence, not just to apologize, but to expose the very people he once vowed to protect, and to unmask the real killer behind Charlie's tragic death. Who's truly controlling the chaos, and what happens next? I've uncovered the truth. Let's dive deep, because the official story is starting to crumble. On September 10th, 2025, the conservative world was rocked to its core when Charlie Kirk, one of its most influential voices, was fatally shot during a live event at Utah Valley University. The 31-year-old founder...
We begin. I'll tell you this, something is not right. Something is not right. And I am going to need you, whoever it is that's listening to this podcast right now, to wake.
It was in the middle of his Prove Me Wrong campus tour when a single bullet tore through the air, striking his neck, silencing him instantly in front of a horrified crowd and millions more who watched the chilling footage spread across social media. Within just 33 hours, investigators claimed victory. They had their suspect, 22-year-old Tyler Robinson. He walked into the police station on his own, flanked by his parents and a close family friend. At first glance, it looked like an open and shut case. Prosecutors wasted no time, charging Tyler with aggravated murder, insisting the evidence was overwhelming. There it was, DNA matching Tyler on the rifle's trigger, a series of text messages confessing to his roommate, and a chilling handwritten note that read, "I had the opportunity to take out Charlie Kirk, and I'm going to take it." But as the noise faded and new details surfaced, the picture started to shift. Suddenly, what once seemed clear became clouded.
Mentioned that the cops have done a sweep. Remember, Tyler is supposed to be babysitting the gun in that moment, waiting for the right moment to go back and quote-unquote retrieve his weapon.
The near-perfect accuracy of the shot, the oddly timed coincidences, and conflicting evidence began to raise doubts, serious ones. Could Tyler Robinson really have done this alone? Or was he just another pawn in a far bigger game? The official timeline paints Tyler Robinson as a cold, methodical assassin who meticulously planned the hit for more than a week. Court filings claim surveillance footage captured Tyler arriving at Utah Valley University in a gray Dodge Challenger around 8:29 a.m., dressed in a maroon t-shirt, light-colored shorts, and a black cap. According to investigators, the footage supposedly shows him moving with an odd, uneven stride.
We can show you. Just take a look at this photo. What is wrong with this picture? A lot is wrong with this picture, first and foremost.
They say matches the outline of a rifle concealed in his pants. Hours later, at 12:15 p.m., he's seen crossing a railing and disappearing onto a nearby rooftop. Just 8 minutes later, at 12:23 p.m., the first major red flag appeared in the ballistics evidence. According to forensic experts, the wound pattern simply didn't match what you'd expect from a .30-06 rifle fired from the distance prosecutors claimed. Even stranger, there was no exit wound at all, despite the round's notoriously high velocity. That single detail sent shockwaves through the investigative community. Experts pointed out that this kind of ammunition typically causes catastrophic exit trauma when fired from close or medium range. So how could it vanish here? Then came the so-called confessional text messages, the very evidence that prosecutors said sealed Tyler Robinson's fate. But now, those messages are facing fierce scrutiny. Critics across the political spectrum argue the texts read like something federally scripted, staged, artificial, and missing critical timestamps or context. Even Candace Owens.
You must have quite the stomach. You don't have a record. Next thing you know, you shoot someone and you're like, I'm just gonna go have a meal. You don't seem to be too shaken or too upset.
Worked closely with Charlie Kirk at Turning Point USA, stepped forward as one of the loudest voices questioning the official story. She wasn't just skeptical, she was furious, demanding to know who was really writing the narrative and why. But the inconsistencies don't end there, not even close. Perhaps the most damning blow to the official story came from a single photograph that surfaced days later. The image reportedly shows Tyler Robinson at a Dairy Queen at 6:38 p.m. on the very day of the shooting, roughly 15 minutes from the Utah Valley University campus. In the photo, Tyler appears calm, relaxed, even smiling, hardly
A timeline. I like a clean timeline. We said the first correspondence that allegedly took place between these two had to have taken place between Tyler and Lance after 6 o'clock p.m. Well, there we go. 6:38 p.m. We get this confirmed photo, or I shouldn't say a confirmed photo, an alleged photo of Tyler Robinson buying food at Dairy Queen off campus on the other side of town, and that's way
the demeanor of a man supposedly on the run from one of the largest manhunts in recent Utah history. The timestamp and location data checked out, leaving investigators scrambling for answers. If this photo is real, then the question becomes unavoidable. Agencies don't stop there. In fact, they only get stranger. Perhaps the most devastating blow to the official narrative came from a single photo that went viral online, allegedly showing Tyler Robinson at a Dairy Queen at 6:38 p.m. on the very day of the shooting. The location? Just 15 minutes from the Utah Valley University campus. Take a good look at that image. What's wrong with this picture? Quite a lot. For starters, it completely undermines the official timeline. If Tyler had truly just carried out one of the most high-profile assassinations in modern American politics, why was he standing calmly in line, ordering food, instead of fleeing the state or hiding from what was described as a nationwide manhunt? Even stranger, the photo shows him wearing a mix of both outfits he was allegedly seen in that day, the maroon shirt from the morning and the jeans from the shooting. That directly contradicts claims that he changed clothes entirely to avoid detection. And honestly, it's unsettling. Imagine that. No criminal record, no signs of panic, and just hours after a murder, he's casually eating ice cream. It doesn't add up. Then there's the language found in those alleged text messages, and this detail has experts scratching their heads. In one message, Tyler supposedly wrote that he changed outfits after hiding the rifle. But linguists and analysts quickly noticed something odd. That phrasing, changed outfits, is statistically far more common among women. Male suspects almost always say changed clothes. Even his supposed message to his friend Lance raised red flags. I worry about Prince. I had to leave it in a bush where I changed outfits. Critics immediately caught the anomaly.
My contention here is that some in the pro-Israel camp are so knee-jerk about calling you anti-Semitic or getting deeply offended if you say anything that doesn't align with their narrative that it undermines their own cause. And I have to tell you,
as one commenter bluntly put it, men don't say outfits. That's a woman thing. All of this leaves one chilling question hanging in the air. If the words don't sound like his, the photo doesn't match the timeline, and the evidence keeps falling apart, then who's really telling the truth? Another strange detail buried in the evidence involves Tyler Robinson's choice of words in those alleged messages. When describing the police activity near the spot where he supposedly ditched the weapon, Tyler referred to a squad car. Now, that might seem minor, but experts say it's not. That term is almost exclusively used by law enforcement professionals, not civilians. Most people would say police car or cop car. So how did Tyler suddenly start talking like an officer? But that's just the beginning. From the moment the investigation began, the case was anything but
I can tell you right now, from the energy that is coming out of him, the energy that's coming out of Megan, is where I was 2 years ago, okay? I've been there. You can't even you can't even attempt to lie to me about what is pouring off of both of them.
Within hours, local police were quietly pushed aside as federal agencies swept in and took full control. That move raised immediate red flags. Why such heavy federal involvement in what was initially described as a simple local homicide? The way the evidence was handled only deepened the mystery. Several local sources reported that any footage they had, from security cameras to cell phones, was swiftly seized by federal authorities, who allegedly warned them not to release it publicly. This sweeping evidence grab effectively shut down independent review, leaving journalists and the public dependent solely on carefully curated, official material. Then there's the strange story behind Tyler Robinson's surrender. According to the official account, it was his parents who recognized him in the surveillance photos and persuaded him to turn himself in. But even as he complied, Tyler reportedly insisted on his innocence, claiming he had never even set foot on the Utah Valley University campus. And perhaps the most troubling contradiction of all lies in the picture of Tyler the authorities have painted. The narrative describes a calculated killer, a man capable of breaching a secured rooftop, setting up a flawless long-range shot, and carrying out an assassination with military-level precision. Yet, somehow, this same man supposedly left behind a trail of rookie mistakes, DNA on...
So glad you brought this up, and I would second that. Megan, I think I have a bulletproof resume showing my defense of Israel, both on campus, on social media, to great, let's just say mockery and scorn at times, because I believe it. Right? I believe
detailed confessional texts, and even a handwritten note outlining his intentions in plain language. It's a paradox that's hard to ignore, the profile of a mastermind, paired with the behavior of an amateur. Something in that equation just doesn't add up. And that's where the contradictions become impossible to ignore. The strange mix of criminal precision and rookie blunders has pushed several investigators to ask the question no one wanted to say out loud. Was Tyler Robinson really the shooter, or was he set up to take the fall for someone else's crime? The level of skill needed for that fatal shot, paired with the almost scripted nature of the so-called evidence, creates a story that simply doesn't align. For many observers, it feels less like a crime of passion and more like a carefully constructed narrative. Which brings us to the deeper layer, the real motives and the hidden pressures surrounding this tragedy. To understand who might have wanted Charlie Kirk dead, we have to look closer at this.
Also, Turning Point employees are contacting me, a lot of them, okay? And I am not liking what I am hearing from them about things that took place leading up to that Hamptons event, some changes at the organization in the months leading up to that event, and what had been happening more broadly at the company over the last
isn't just a
year.
tale of rivalry. It's the portrait of a man trapped between powerful forces, facing threats from multiple directions, and none of them had anything to do with Tyler Robinson. And here's where things start to get even more unsettling. In the weeks leading up to his death, Charlie Kirk found himself locked in a very public and increasingly bitter battle with some of his most powerful donors and supporters. At the center of the conflict were his shifting views on Israel and his controversial decision to give a platform to figures like Tucker Carlson and Dave Smith at Turning Point USA events. That internal tension reached a breaking point during what attendees later described as an intervention. It took place at a private Hamptons retreat in early August 2025, hosted by billionaire Bill Amann. Multiple sources claim that Kirk was cornered by major donors and pressured to soften his stance on Israel and to publicly distance himself from certain speakers whose views were deemed too extreme. According to people present that weekend, Charlie Kirk left the retreat feeling betrayed, even blackmailed. They say he was offered massive funding in exchange for his compliance with specific...
Now, the thing that Candace is not saying, and I don't understand why she's leaving this out of this, because she mentioned this in a previous episode, is that they showed her that footage. The person got on a call with her and showed her that footage. So she has seen that footage, but...
Israel talking points. To some, it felt less like a political negotiation and more like a warning, a reminder of just how dangerous defiance could be. The pressure Charlie Kirk was under becomes undeniable when you look at what happened immediately afterward. Just one day after the tense Hamptons meeting, he appeared on Megyn Kelly's show, and the timing couldn't have been more revealing. Bill Amann himself later confirmed that the retreat took place on August 4th and 5th, while Kirk's interview aired on August 6th. On camera, he looked visibly agitated, his tone sharper, his frustration barely contained.
A curse that was put on Charlie just before he went out to UVU.
I learned when I was out in Arizona last week that 2 weeks before Charlie Kirk was assassinated, the far-left website Jezebel declared that it had a mission to cast bad luck or a curse on Charlie. They wanted to hurt him in some way.
You could sense it. Something behind the scenes had shaken him. It was no longer just political disagreement, it was pressure, and it was public. During that Megyn Kelly interview, Charlie Kirk didn't hold back. He spoke candidly about the mounting pressure from pro-Israel advocates who, he said, instantly branded any form of criticism as anti-Semitic. His frustration was unmistakable, his voice tight, his words deliberate as he described receiving text messages accusing him of being an anti-Semite, despite his long record of support for Israel and even his personal study of Hebrew. Behind the scenes, the financial strain on Kirk and Turning Point USA was reaching a breaking point. Major donor Robert Shillman reportedly pulled his funding just days before the assassination, a devastating financial and symbolic blow to the organization. But it didn't stop there. According to multiple insiders, Kirk had confided to colleagues that the group's financial stability was faltering. In the week leading up to
remind you guys, we should take a look at their current case against Tyler Robinson to see if we should accept this narrative, because currently there is absolutely no video which shows Tyler Robinson firing the weapon or even taking aim at Charlie Kirk. In fact,
as death, he reportedly voiced deep concern that powerful interests were trying to squeeze him into silence and that the pressure wasn't just political anymore. The internal situation at Turning Point USA was apparently deteriorating rapidly. Kirk had planned to conduct a comprehensive financial audit of the organization, potentially exposing irregularities in how donor funds were being managed. This audit, scheduled to begin shortly after his death, represented a significant threat to anyone who might have been misappropriating funds or using the organization for purposes beyond its stated mission. The pressure wasn't limited to financial matters. Kirk was also facing intense criticism for his speaker choices and his willingness to engage with controversial figures. The decision to feature Tucker Carlson at America Fest and other Turning Point events had generated significant pushback from donors and board members. Some viewed Carlson's increasingly critical stance towards certain aspects.
In fact, the individual who filmed the footage of the shooter on the roof, the lone video that exists of the shooter on the roof, also told me that he doesn't think that Tyler Robinson is the guy.
Of U.S. foreign policy as problematic for an organization that relied heavily on donations from supporters of traditional Republican foreign policy positions. But perhaps the most chilling part of the campaign against Charlie Kirk wasn't political or financial, it was psychological. What unfolded in the final weeks of his life resembled something closer to psychological warfare. Just 2 weeks before the assassination, the far-left outlet Jezebel published an article announcing what it called a mission to curse Kirk, even going so far as to hire self-proclaimed practitioners on Etsy to perform hexes against him. On the surface, it might sound like little more than online provocation, digital theater meant to mock and provoke. But for Charlie and his wife Erica, it wasn't so easy to dismiss. Friends say the attacks took a visible toll, leaving them anxious and on edge. The situation became so unsettling that the couple reportedly reached out to a Catholic priest seeking spiritual protection. To some, it was superstition.
Say this right away. As a rule, when a tragedy happens, I don't love the people who have the instinct to immediately speak to the press after a tragedy. What I mean to say is that imagine you're on campus somewhere, a shooting happens, students are screaming, they're running, somebody is dead. I feel that a normal person's instinct is to make sure their loved ones are okay in their immediate vicinity, make sure they are okay, obviously, and then to call and alert everyone who would be concerned that you're okay, right? Maybe your mom's texting you that, like you're gonna get on the phone first with like your mom and dad. You're not gonna get on the phone with TMZ. You're not gonna get you're gonna speak to the press first. I don't think so.
Something darker closing in, a pressure that went beyond politics, beyond money, and straight into fear. But perhaps the most chilling part of the campaign against Charlie Kirk wasn't political or financial, it was psychological. What unfolded in the final weeks of his life resembled something closer to psychological warfare. Just 2 weeks before the assassination, the far-left outlet Jezebel published an article announcing what it called a mission to curse Kirk, even going so far as to hire self-proclaimed practitioners on Etsy to perform hexes against him. On the surface, it might sound like little more than online provocation, digital theater meant to mock and provoke. But for Charlie and his wife Erica, it wasn't so easy to dismiss. Friends say the attacks took a visible toll, leaving them anxious and on edge. The situation became so unsettling that the couple reportedly reached out to a Catholic priest seeking spiritual protection. To some, it was superstition.
Well, I have it now on a very well-placed authoritative source that the FBI is putting an absurd amount of pressure right now on the authorities in Utah and also the rest of the government in Utah to come out and to say that the Charlie Kirk case is closed.
That Kirk had begun to sense something darker closing in, a pressure that went beyond politics, beyond money, and straight into fear. Weeks of financial strain, donor backlash, internal turmoil, and what can only be described as spiritual warfare created a perfect storm around Charlie Kirk in the final weeks of his life. He had become a man under siege, cornered from every direction, with threats mounting against his livelihood, his organization, and even his faith. What followed after his death? Mystery. Within days, many of the very donors who had been pressuring him suddenly